Hello, friends. Welcome back. I am Serena in this episode, which will probably replace the live stream for Friday, seeing as I haven't been well. I'm not quite sure if I'll be able to stream live. In this episode, what I will be talking about is the absolute latest in the case of Sweden, where there's been a mass shooting and very little has been said about it by the likes, well, by the very noisy likes of, well, you can name them all, the ones who keep banging on about terrorism, but don't call it out in every respect, in every case. So there is that. I'll also be going into the comment section to read and reflect on some of your contributions after I posted a couple of short videos. So they were actually 3 minutes long. YouTube can what allows you to upload up to 3 minutes, and it was about Trump's stance on Palestine. And there was a bit of pushback that I got, which is fantastic, which is what this channel is all about. So I thought I'd review those comments, reflect on them, and invite more of your comments for that. And then also there's a breaking story, and this is with regards to Apple. The UK orders Apple to give it access to users' encrypted accounts. So there's a report there that I'm going to read. So wonderful to have you here. If you haven't already subscribed, please do consider doing so, because I like to provide commentary, bit of analysis, bit of humor, bit of trolling about media and politics and zeitgeist-ish. And I do it from a place of common sense, sitting on the fence. And why do I do that? Because of course we are biased, and of course we have subjective mental models, but what I try my best to do is not to get lost in the sauce, not to hitch my what cart to any bandwagon. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out my own way of saying this. So, um, I really try to have a channel and a community here where we can. And I'm not going to say all are welcome. It's not that all are welcome, because what we don't want is, utter asinine stupidity, ignorance. What we don't want is that. But what we do want is to be able to sort of push back, have a conversation about it, not get insulted, not get offended. And that's one thing that I really want to talk about. There's a sort of a level of reactivity that happens when anyone talks about Palestine, for instance, as an example. Some dust there. So I want to talk about that. Oh, it's an eyelash. Is it mine? I think so. Let's make a wish. What's my wish? What's my wish? Let's get the channel to 10,000 subs ASAP. Thanks. So let's get to the first story. A little bit more serious, but as you all have known, Sweden suffered its deadliest school shooting in history. And from this report that was a couple of days ago, the count is 11. 11 have been unalived. Now, what I want to do is look at this story in the, with the lens of, why is it that this isn't being called out as an issue that us in society, those of us who care about society, etc., should be very concerned about, and why aren't we digging deeper into it? Why isn't it being dug deeper into by many? And I will talk about who when I read out one of the comments from my very thoughtful audience members who had something to say about it. So I'm going to share that in a moment. But let's go to this report very quickly. So at least 11 people were unalived, killed in Sweden's worst mass shooting, including the gunman at an adult education center in Örebro, with 5 others seriously wounded. Got a bit of a cold, sorry. The motive for the shooting remains unknown, and police believe the gunman acted alone without any prior warnings. The king, the prime minister, ordered flags to be flown at half-staff in remembrance of the victims. Survivors described the event as terrifying, with one stating, Those were the worst hours of my life, highlighting the impact on the community. I'm going to quickly go to a story about this. This has been shared. This has been published by the European. And just so you know, the story has been curated and brought to my attention via Ground News, of which I am an affiliate, and you can get a discount on a subscription. More information is in my YouTube description. So, the shooting in Sweden, an entire event which shakes our entire society. So, this apparently leans left, high in factuality, thanks to Ground News giving me that sort of heads up. 11 people are dead in the latest outbreak of horrifying violence in Sweden. Can the nation hold together? This is a story by Joshua Worth. 4 people were shot at a school in the Swedish city of Örebro. Sweden is reeling after an act of terrible violence which left at least 11 people dead and 5 seriously injured around 12:30 on Tuesday. A 35-year-old gunman walked into the campus of an adult education center in the central city of Örebro. Sorry if I'm not saying that right. Around 120 miles west of Stockholm, carrying a guitar case. He went into a toilet and got changed before emerging armed with 2 weapons. The head of the Risbergska campus, described sitting in the cafeteria eating her lunch when students came rushing through, telling everyone to run. Videos on social media, filmed from inside the building, showed people outside fleeing as shots echo in the background. Witnesses described helping classmates who had been shot. The corridors were streaked with blood. Others were trapped inside the school and in nearby restaurants and shops for several hours before the National Task Force, arriving in helicopters from Stockholm, entered and evacuated the buildings. Images on the news showed survivors in blood-stained clothing leaving the school. Around 2 hours after the alarm was raised, it was over. The gunman was confirmed among the dead, apparently from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The police have named him as Richard Anderson. At the time of writing, the full picture has yet, and the suspect has not been formally named, but this much is known. The 35-year-old man had a gun license, but no previous convictions, and was previously unknown to the police or security forces. In a newspaper article, the gunman's father described him as a loner who struggled with mental health issues, was socially isolated, and had limited contact with his family. At a press conference, the Prime Minister called it the worst mass shooting in Swedish history, saying it is hard to take in the scale of the darkness which now lies over Sweden. The Justice Minister called it an event which shakes our entire society to its core. It caps a violent and troubling start to the new year for Sweden. Shootings and explosions are at record levels, all part of the ongoing gang warfare that has plagued Sweden in recent years. At a press conference earlier in January, the Prime Minister acknowledged, "We've lost control of the situation. That is all too clear." On January the 29th, Salwan Momika, the man who attracted worldwide attention after he burned multiple copies of the Quran in 2023, was shot to death on his balcony in Stockholm whilst live streaming on TikTok. That murder has been put forward as a speculative cause of the massacre, especially given the profile of the Risbergska campus, which offers Swedish language classes and vocational training to several thousand adult students, many of whom are from outside Sweden, but police have said they do not suspect an ideological motive. Attacks such as these are rare in Sweden, but not unprecedented. In 2022, 2 teachers were killed in Malmö by an 18-year-old student at the school. In 2015, a man in Trollhättan, armed with a samurai sword, killed 3 people at a local school in a racially motivated attack. In 1994, the country suffered 2 mass shootings in its months. The first, an off-duty lieutenant in the Swedish army who killed 7 people with a service weapon in the town of Falun, and the second, a shooting in the entrance of a nightclub in Stockholm, which left 4 people dead. In 2017, a man claiming allegiance to IS drove a stolen truck from Drottninggatan, Stockholm Central Shopping Street, killing 5 people. Flags across the nation flew at half-mast on Wednesday morning, and while the country may be in a state of shock, many say they are not surprised. More and more schools and workplaces have begun programs for incidents like this, and the general mood of fear and uncertainty is palpable. The fact the gunman held a valid weapon license will certainly come under scrutiny, but the political fallout has yet to really begin, with calls for unity and a coordinated political response to the ongoing wave of violence. As a leader by the editor of Daganyatar, the country's newspaper of record, read on the morning after the attack, seldom has it felt so dark. Hold together, Sweden. So that's from the New European Think Without Borders. Now, I'm going to quickly go to my comments. And it's interesting because this was mentioned and it got me thinking, because I understand that it's not within this within the UK, for instance, for people like Tommy Robinson, Farage, etc., to care. And also, they're currently trying to make a point about terror attacks, acts of violence being carried out by those who represent a certain ideology. But it's interesting that, and this is what Ronnie, share this instead. Is it Ronio524 says, biggest shooting in Sweden history, and they don't call it a terror attack? Question mark. Where is Tate, Elon, Nigel, Douglas Murray, Tommy? I wonder why right wingers on X aren't all over this biggest gun attack in Swedish history. I replied, interesting, right? There was something within that article that was quite telling, really, talking about the sort of psychological state of the person who carried this out. And again, it got me thinking about the many influencers, the likes of Jordan Peterson. And I know I called him an influencer. He's not technically an influencer, but in terms of the power that he has, the influence that he has, they talk a lot about sort of isolated, sort of how, the effect of isolation and disengagement from society and from uh, a group of friends, and what that does to the psyche, and how they could almost manifest into something quite dysfunctional that is definitely at odds with sort of societal norms around safety and cohesion and following rules, etc. And so I think that they would probably be very quick to jump on this and use it for their own point making agenda. And we see that happening a lot, and we see it happen with politicians and the broligarchy and all those people that commenter just sort of named, is that this won't be at the top of the agenda because it takes away from the potency of what they're trying to say, and what they're trying to bang on about, because they're trying to win an election. So I think the prediction here is we'll probably continue to hear about the sort of selective terror, selective acts of violence, because that's what suits the agenda for those particular individuals. Now, this sort of nicely segues to the point that I wanted to make about the impact that the media and all of these types of individuals, brands, entities, voices have on us. They have us all in a constant sort of state of limbo and anticipation and not knowing what's going to happen next. And that's what I said essentially in my video about Trump's stance on what do we know, what don't we know, what is certain, what is uncertain. And the certainty is that America is an empire, and like all empires, they are looking at resources, territory, control, and so nothing has changed there. How this happens, though, we don't know, and the how will be ugh, intellectualized. I mean, it will provide so much time and space to a lot of conversations, a lot of media reporting, a lot of interviews with pundits and opinion makers and those within sort of media and politics, because that will basically get the clicks and keep everyone in this continuous tailspin of anticipation and being in limbo. And that is quite convenient. It's quite convenient for policymakers, lawmakers, those with a seat around the table, because while everyone is basically tail spinning and not knowing what's going to happen and how it's going to happen, they're quietly just rolling out their short-term program. And so the kind of pushback that I got, so that's just to give you a little bit of context of what I was saying, why I was saying it. And so in my latest video, I said constant reactivity doesn't help anyone. And this person, F.A. Hassan, says, I think we need to act actively and speak up loudly. They did not consider what happened in Gaza as a genocide, and they are going to impose sanctions on the International Court, which is a shame. Nobody believes human rights or international justice anymore. Nobody believes human rights or international justice anymore. Well, no one has faith in it. No one has faith in it. The scale of destruction and this absolute scale of people turn off when you keep using words that they will essentially use to disagree with you. So it's really important to sort of describe it so that they can not dispute it. So the scale of destruction, the complete um, indiscriminatory, consistent sort of attack, bombing, flattening, and killing, even during so-called ceasefire periods, pretty much tells you that it is an untrustworthy player, actor at the table that you're dealing with when it comes to Israel and those in government. So we're in a very, I think, you can view it quite pessimistically, because after more than a year, they've been able to continue, and it just doesn't look like from this sort of current point in time that Netanyahu will be limited in any way to continue what his plan seems to have been all along. So that's currently my kind of very pessimistic and sad, tragic view, is that there's this sort of helplessness in saying that. So when somebody says you've got to carry on speaking up, you've got to speak loudly, people have. I mean, it's gone all the way to the courts. The people who are invested in everything that's been going on, and the complete dissemination of Gaza and the Palestinian people, um, have been able to continue um, and sort of hide in plain sight, um, and it's been enabled by very very convenient, intricately complex relationship between sort of so-called resistance fighters who at one point were very much at the let's say involved with Netanyahu. And so it's like I've said this very much from the start, and that is that I don't and I can't trust any of the players in this entire thing, um, this entire scheme, this whole play, whatever this is. I don't trust, and I'm not hopeful either. Um, I take a step back from these things and try and look at what the sort of divine message and wisdom is in this. I pray for those who are suffering. I try and do my best to have the right sorts of conversations. I try and challenge my own assumptions, and I guess use my activism in my way that makes the most sense, is most appropriate. And I just don't know what more that we can do. It's one of the reasons why I decided to study systems thinking at postgraduate level, because I'm looking at all of these sort of like global affairs, micro and then macro as well. So globally, macro, and then micro, sort of like societally. And I look at all these dilemmas and issues, and I'm thinking, how would you sort of figure this out? How would you resolve it? How would you pick apart all of these things? What are the knowns? What are the unknowns? What are the dependencies? How to look at this relationally? Like, you have got to look at things with, like, you know, what is the stance of the Arab world or the sort of more dominant players in that region, and why is their stance the way it is, and why don't they care enough, or who does actually care, and why do they care? Do they care more because this provides them with a motivation for an agenda that's very separate from the actual sort of like humanity of the Palestinian people? I don't know. Again, there's lots of untrustworthy players in this entire sort of circuit, which I feel like somewhere it needs, the circuit needs to break and there has to be a reset. And a lot of people thought Trump would be that reset. And unfortunately, at the moment, I don't think that that will be the reset, as such. I think perhaps also, I mean, Trump might be doing a very smart thing by playing some kind of a trick on Netanyahu. I don't know. Like, I literally, I just don't know. Like, a lot of us just don't know. And it's sort of, I think the people who are like hardcore Trump supporters, they're like, just you wait. Like, this had to happen. You know, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. There has to be a change, and that's what Trump is doing. A lot of MAGA people aren't supporting this though, and there are many on the left who are like, "What the actual f?" Right? So it's a very it's a very bewildering and confusing time, and I would implore others to just sort of take a pause and take a step back and just try and take in the bigger picture, and not to get into a reactive state, because that's essentially what sort of they need from all of us, is to constantly be in this state of reactivity, which is just not useful for any of us. You know, you've got to be very present right now in the moment that you're in, and sort of figure out the very best next step, the course of action that's going to have the best, most sort of effective sort of impact. And I just don't think being constantly reactive and emotional is a good state to be in. It just doesn't feel very smart or intelligent. It's almost like, duh, that's what they kind of want you to do. I know I'm very serious today, but it's because I'm just not well. So anyway, so somebody here, Ronnie, also said, so you accept the fact that since Palestinians are powerless, it sucks to suck? I don't know. Could we use the same logic in Germany? I said, I don't understand. Can you rewrite? I don't understand, because I was basically saying Trump's plan for Palestine, we can pretty much see that this is predictable thing, and in the sense that this is what empires do. There's a lot of resource there. They're going to want it for themselves. I just don't know. I just don't know. So yeah, that it's been bit of interesting pushback. Almost all Arab countries are against his plan, Trump's plan. I'm sure it's not going to happen. What he wants is unrealistic and unacceptable. And I said it's essentially forced displacement. And the person, MFA Hassan, says it is, but it's not as easy as he thinks. It certainly isn't. But, you know, again, another unknown in this situation is we just don't know. We just don't know what are the conversations being had behind the scenes. Um, and if we don't know the conversations behind the scenes, then it's quite hard for us to sort of forecast how things are going to happen. But sort of being in a constant panic doesn't help us, not one bit. It's actually quite, I would say, unproductive. So that's all I'm going to say about that for now. But of course, I welcome your comments and we'll end up having a conversation about it. So let's go to this next story. UK orders Apple to give it access to users' encrypted accounts. This is a report. So the UK has ordered Apple to create a backdoor for accessing users' encrypted iCloud data. As reported by the Washington Post, the demand issued under the UK's Investigatory Powers Act 2016 seeks blanket access to encrypted files rather than specific accounts, according to the report. Apple may stop offering its advanced data protection service in the UK due to this order, which could impact its global privacy standards. This request is unprecedented among major democracies and raises concerns over privacy violations, as noted by Mark Cuban. So let's go to the story very quickly. This is from US News. UK orders Apple to give it access to users' encrypted accounts. Reuters, British security officials have ordered that Apple create a so-called backdoor line then to retrieve all the content any Apple user worldwide has uploaded to the cloud. The Washington Post reported on Friday, citing people familiar with the matter. The iPhone maker is likely to stop offering encrypted storage in the UK rather than break the security promises it made to its users everywhere, the report said, citing unnamed sources. Apple did not respond to a Reuters request for comment outside regular business hours. UK's Office of the Home Secretary has served Apple with a document called a Technical Capability Notice, ordering it to provide the access as per Washington Post. And this is a quote from the Home Office. We do not comment on operational matters, including, for example, confirming or denying the existence of any such notices. Britain in January used its regulatory powers to launch an investigation into Apple and Google smartphone operating systems, app stores, and browsers. I might very quickly look at X to see whether anyone has anything to say about this, because this is interesting. So let's have a quick look. Apple. Have a quick look. What people are saying. Breaking. So this is on Big Brother Watch. UK government orders Apple to let them spy on users who are extremely troubled by reports that UK has ordered Apple to create a backdoor. Let's see what we all want government to be able to effectively tackle crime and terrorism, but breaking encryption will not make us safer. Instead, it will erode the fundamental rights and civil liberties of the entire population. And it will not stop with Apple. We urge the UK government to immediately rescind this draconian order and cease attempts to employ mass surveillance in lieu of the targeted powers already at their disposal. And that's from Rebecca Vincent, the interim director at Big Brother Watch. What people are saying about this. Tim G says, I think run with the thought that everything is recorded and monitors as most likely the truth is most likely the truth, sadly. Yep. Oregano says Apple could be a hero and tell them to pound sand. Robin Minotti says use Telegram on an above phone. Above phone. Tell me, do you know what an above phone is? Charlock says, I doubt the Trump administration will permit Apple to do this. Tim Cook was at the top table at the inauguration. Howard Klein says, how can this ever work? Any serious criminal would use a burner phone to communicate. Kerith Makura said, I've never owned an Apple product. Do you? Are you like anti-Apple product? Like, let me know. Do you think they're really doing this already? Says, it's unbelievable. Edward Tam says, they requested on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party, I suppose. Haha. And Heather says, we live in a country which is supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. These laws are basically saying everyone is guilty until you prove otherwise. Crazy. Ooh, let me know what your thoughts are on that. This was a shorter stream, if you like, but not a live stream. Give me a little time to recover, and I should be back with more. But I do appreciate your time and attention, since they're the most valuable things that we have, and I appreciate that you've watched this far. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. There are multiple ways that you can show support to me and my channel. You can join here. You can also come along to Patreon, and there are other links available as well that you can click on, find out a little bit more about me and what I do and why I do this. It's wonderful to have your ears. So do enjoy the rest of your night and weekend, and I'll catch you soon.